That makes sense for you. She said it with a warm smile, maybe even a nod, like she was being supportive, and for a second, you almost took it at face value. But something snagged, a micro-catch in your chest, because the sentence landed about 2 degrees off from where kindness actually lives. The words say agreement. Your nervous system hears separation. It sounded like validation. It landed like a quiet demotion. By the end of this video, you'll hear these phrases everywhere. In your office, in your living room, in texts from people who love you. And you'll know exactly what they're doing underneath the courtesy. And there's one phrase, the last one I'll break down, that's so deeply woven into everyday conversation. Once I decode it, you will never hear it the same way again. Politeness is the most sophisticated delivery system for control ever invented. Not because it's loud, because it's invisible. A rude comment gives you something to push back against. You can name it. You can reject it. But a polite phrase? It walks right through your defenses wearing the uniform of kindness, and by the time you realize something happened, the person is already smiling at you like nothing did. Your brain processes tone before content. Linguists call it pragmatic framing. The social packaging of a sentence tells your nervous system how to categorize it before the actual meaning even lands. So, when someone wraps a power move in warmth, your guard drops first, the meaning arrives second, and by then, you've already nodded along. That's why you couldn't push back. Not because you were weak, because there was nothing impolite to push back against. The words were clean, the tone was kind, and the thing you felt, that quiet tightening somewhere behind your ribs, had no evidence to point to. You weren't confused. You were outmaneuvered by someone who never raised their voice. Here's what it looks like in practice. Picture this. You're telling a friend about a decision you've made, a career move, a relationship choice, something that matters. She listens, tilts her head, and says, "I mean, that makes sense for you. Not that makes sense. Not that's a great call. That makes sense. For you." 2 words do the entire job. For you sounds like personalization, like she's honoring your unique perspective. But what it actually constructs is a split. There's what makes sense for you, and then, implied but never spoken, there's what would make sense for someone who thinks more clearly, someone operating at a different altitude. She placed herself up there without saying a single word about it. It's agreement without alignment. She didn't disagree with you. That would be honest. And honesty can be challenged. Instead, she exempted herself from your logic while sounding generous about it. And what would you even say? Why did you say, "for me"? You'd sound unhinged. You'd sound like you were dissecting a perfectly warm sentence. She'd blink, maybe look hurt, and say, "I was literally being supportive." You felt the distance. You just couldn't prove it was placed there on purpose. Your discomfort was the correct response. That one's almost casual, easy to miss in the flow of conversation. The next one isn't casual at all. It shows up when someone has authority over you, and it sounds like they're trying to help. There's a phrase that doesn't attack your decision. It attacks your process, the quality of your thinking, which is nearly impossible to defend because it's invisible. And the phrase sounds so caring that you might actually thank the person who says it. "I just want to make sure you've really thought this through." Your manager says it in a one-on-one. A mentor drops it over coffee. A senior colleague tucks it into an email that ends with a smiley face. The surface reads like investment, like they care about your success enough to pause and check in. But listen to the word really. It's performing surgery. It implies you have thought about it, but not enough. Not at the depth this situation requires. Not the way someone more capable would have. Strip away the caring packaging and the sentence says, "I doubt your judgment, but I'm going to let you prove me wrong on your own time." Something in your posture shifts when you hear it. You sit a little differently. Your voice lifts at the end of your next sentence, turning your statements into questions, asking permission to believe your own plan. You weren't being guided. You were being framed as someone who needs guidance. And the frame was so polite you held the door open for it. You heard it right. It was never mentorship. It was positioning. Stay with me. Because this next one doesn't happen at work. It happens with someone you love. And it doesn't sound like doubt. It sounds like the most generous thing anyone could say. There's a feeling that sits somewhere between gratitude and abandonment. You've felt it before, that sudden quiet after someone gave you exactly what you asked for, except it didn't feel like receiving. It felt like being released, like someone set you down gently and walked away. The phrase that creates this feeling is almost always the same. You do whatever you need to do. A partner says it during a disagreement. You're in the middle of trying to reach each other, trying to find common ground, and they lean back, soften their expression, and deliver it. Your whole body pauses, because that sounded like trust, like they're giving you space to decide, like they're choosing, nobly, not to control you, but slow it down. What they actually did was leave. They exited the partnership while staying physically in the room. The polite version. You do whatever you need to do. The translation. I've decided I'm done negotiating, and when it goes wrong, I want us both to remember that I stepped aside gracefully. It sounds like permission. It functions as withdrawal with plausible deniability. Your gut tightened. You wanted to say, I don't want you to let me. I want you to be in this with me. But the sentence was so open, so magnanimous, that any pushback would make you look controlling for not accepting the freedom you were so generously offered. That was never generosity. That was a clean exit dressed in the language of love. Now it gets personal. Because this next phrase doesn't come from a partner or a colleague. It comes from someone whose approval you were wired, since childhood, to seek. And it wears the face of protection. You're excited about something. You're about to try something bold. Speak up at an event, post something honest, take a risk that finally feels like yours. And before you've even finished describing it, you hear, I just don't want you to embarrass yourself, said quietly, said with soft eyes and maybe a hand on your arm. The sentence never tells you no. It does something more precise. It tells you that the version of you who's excited right now is someone who needs to be rescued from yourself. Embarrassment gets positioned as an incoming threat that only they can see. They're the lookout. They can read the room you haven't even entered yet. Translate that out of its protective wrapping, and you get, I don't approve, and I'm framing my disapproval as concern, so you'll comply on your own. You smiled and said you'd reconsider. Your stomach didn't agree. Not because they told you to stop, not because they raised their voice, but because they looked at your confidence and called it a liability with such tenderness that resisting it would have felt like cruelty. You weren't protected, you were contained. And you've probably heard that phrase so many times from that same person that you stopped noticing its shape. You just stopped taking risks around them and called it growing up. It was never protection. It was a leash with a soft handle. Everything up to this point has been warm-up. This last phrase is the one that changes how you hear people, because it doesn't just hide a power move inside politeness. It hides an entire withdrawal inside what sounds like the deepest form of trust. There's a reason this phrase works so well, and it has nothing to do with tone. It has to do with architecture. The sentence is structurally designed to transfer all ownership to you while sounding like a gift. It's one of the cleanest moves in everyday conversation, and you've almost certainly been on the receiving end of it this week. Whatever you think is best, hear it in context. You've asked someone for input. Maybe you're planning something together, making a decision that affects you both. You want collaboration. You want their voice in it. And they tilt their head, maybe smile, and say, whatever you think is best. It sounds like confidence in your judgment. Like they trust you so completely they don't even need to weigh in. Like they're stepping back out of respect. But what just happened, and your chest registers this before your brain catches up, is that they left the decision while remaining in the room. They didn't agree. They didn't disagree. They handed you a hall pass made of smoke. Here's the architecture. If the decision works out, they were supportive. If it fails, they never endorsed it. They said, whatever you think. That word, you, isn't trust. It's a transfer of liability, one you accepted because it was gift-wrapped in admiration. I've started calling this the clean hand, because the person who says it never touches the outcome. They stay spotless. And you carry everything, the choice, the risk, the weight, and the quiet doubt at 2 a.m. about why their support always felt so weightless. Remember that makes sense for you? That first phrase at least hinted at distance, you could almost feel the line being drawn. This one performs closeness while achieving total separation. Presence without participation. Agreement without skin in the game. You weren't being trusted. You were being set up to carry it alone. And here's what nobody talks about. You've said some of these too. Not because you're calculating, not because you sat down and designed a strategy, but because these phrases were installed in you before you were old enough to hear the second layer. You learned whatever you think is best from someone who said it to you first. You learned, I just want to make sure you've thought this through at a kitchen table where it sounded like wisdom. The language was inherited. It came with the social operating system. You didn't learn these as power moves. You learned them as politeness, and now you speak them fluently. But once you can hear the second conversation, the one running underneath the polite one, you get to choose which conversations you actually agree to. Awareness doesn't make you cynical. It makes you literate. And literacy means you can finally decide when to speak, what to accept, and what to simply let pass through you without it ever landing. Drop the phrase in the comments, the one you've been hearing your whole life that finally clicked while watching this. Which one made you replay a conversation you thought was over? If this is the first video of mine you've found, subscribe. Every video on this channel decodes what no one else is willing to say out loud. You'll hear it everywhere now.